Dear Queenagers, this is my newsletter for March 15th. You may see it, I'm in the mountains. And we talk a lot at noon in the circles together about creating a new map for what midlife and beyond can be for women. And currently in our culture, there aren't very many examples of what older women can be or do other than being grandmothers. And given that nearly a third of university-educated Queenagers are child-free, we certainly see that in our community. They're not going to be mothers, which means that they're certainly not going to be grandmothers, which is a pretty big cohort. So therefore, it's time for a rethink and some new inspiration about what this next phase of life can and should be for women. Regular readers will know that I think of this stage as the age of becoming. So many of us have spent the last 25 years since we became grown up ticking everyone else's boxes. We were told to get jobs, get married, have kids, find somewhere to live, and primarily to look after everyone else. A good woman, so the script went when we were growing up, puts her own needs last. She's pleasing and pleasant and sacrifices herself to serve those around her, whether that's at home, at work, or both. Well, I say enough of that. For many of us, it is only when we get buffeted by the midlife collision and much of what we thought we'd built falls away because of divorce or bereavement or redundancy or the empty nest or illness or caring for our dying parents. And it's actually sometimes only at that point when all those things have gone that we finally have the chance to ask ourselves, what do I want? Indeed, who am I? And what am I going to do with this next chapter of my life? And that is what Noon was founded to help with. Many of you'll remember it was our 5th birthday last weekend. And every month in our circles, I see women come and say something aloud they've never said before, such as, my husband left after 18 years of marriage 2 days ago, and I'm actually relieved. Or, I just got made redundant and I don't know what to do next. Or, my partner of 25 years is dying and I don't know what I'm going to do without him. Sometimes it is as simple as, I know my life looks great on the outside, but the reality is, I'm lonely. Or just, there has to be more to life than this. I'm not done yet. There has to be more out there. I am in awe of the courage it takes to turn up to a circle and make such a mighty admission, and also endlessly impressed and inspired by the love, compassion and hard-earned wisdom and co-created support which follows such admissions. I'm also constantly on the lookout for inspiration out there in the culture, which backs up and reinforces our Noon mission to create a new positive map of what women are for in midlife and beyond. A new narrative which transcends the reductive male gaze, which values women mainly for being fecund and fanciable, and thus has little use for us once, in its view, we're neither of those things anymore. So, in the March circles, we've been asking the question, what or who inspires us? How do we move beyond the often negative assumptions around midlife women which surround us and buoy ourselves up to live in a new and different way? The answers have been rich and fascinating. Personally, I've been inspired recently by the calm dignity and courage of Giselle Pellicot. Maybe it's because I'm in France, I've been thinking about her, and I'm also reading her book, The French Woman Who Was Raped Repeatedly by Her Husband and 53 Other Men in Her Own Bed. I've been reading her memoir. She blamed the terrifying memory lapses and tremors she had in her body as a result of the drugs and the assaults he was using to incapacitate her for the rapes on what she assumed was a brain tumour. There's a really sad background to this. Her mother had died of a brain tumour when she was very young, and all her life she thought that the brain tumour was coming for her. And she writes that losing her mind and drifting away, which she thought was just my fate. She was so wrapped up in this internal narrative of genetic decline that she didn't suspect her husband for a second. The dignity with which she recounts this tale of horror, her bravery in making the trial public, and her insistence that shame must change sides, is about the most inspirational story I have ever read. Particularly gratifying is that she has now fallen in love again as a Queenager, and she describes herself as deliriously happy, and despite the horrors that she survived, can still find joy in her life. Brava, what an inspiration to us all. I've also found really inspirational the Apple TV series Shrinking, in which Harrison Ford plays a psychotherapist in his 80s with Parkinson's. I know it sounds depressing, but it isn't. It's touching, heartfelt, and life-affirming, particularly in its depiction of how, as we age, we can also develop psychologically in ways we never expected. Harrison Ford's character has built a wall around himself during his life, but the diagnosis sees him fall in love with his hot 70-something doctor, reignite his relationship with his estranged daughter, and finally allow in all the friends who love him. It's made by the same people who created Ted Lasso, and unlike most TV programmes, it's optimistic and loving about humankind, and particularly about ageing. It's also true. Carl Jung wrote about how our personalities shift and change as we age, often for the better. If we do the work, that is. And closer to home, my stepfather, Peter Hildebrand, who was a distinguished psychoanalyst and scholar, in his book, Beyond Midlife Crisis, also wrote about the incredible psychological transformation he saw in his older patients. It really is not too late to become the women we always wanted to be. And these things in the culture remind us of that. Indeed, I think midlife is when all those family gremlins come home to roost and we finally get a chance to make peace with them and move into a new phase. Carl Jung talked about how we spend our early lives becoming a somebody, all that striving that I was talking about earlier. We lose that in midlife as it all falls away and we become a nobody. That's the redundancy or the divorce or the death. And then if we do the work and we really hang in there and we encounter our shadows, and we learn with them, we become an everybody, able to become a still point of calm for those around us, secure enough in who we are that we can hold that space for others. This was very much echoed in the circles last month. Many of the women who felt they'd been defined by job titles or status or maybe a marriage or something else for much of their lives talked about the freedom they felt in becoming post-achievement, a phase where I can finally dictate what success looks like for me, as one of the women put it last week. They talked about being inspired by the other women they met at the noon circles. You all certainly inspire me. But when pressed for who else around us inspires them, who else in the culture that is, it was pretty thin pickings. Proof of how much we need to hold and create that map of a new kind of possibility at this point in our lives for each other. Some names that were offered in the circle, there were some names, of course, that were offered, including Beth Kempton, who writes a Substack about Japanese wisdom about ageing, our London host, the brilliant Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, thank you so much for hosting us, whose Substack Elderberries is a must-read on the 100-year life. So I find her inspiring. And another one of our members talked about a Buddhist nun called Roshi Joan Halifax, who runs a Buddhist order in New Mexico based on radically inclusive principles. Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand president, also got a mention for soft power, her presence, authority, and leading in a different kind of a way. And also the comedians Amy Poehler and Tina Fey for their bravery and humour in speaking the formerly unspeakable. I was interested in Camilla Siddiqui, an Afghan woman who keeps the plight of other Afghan women in the news, who's written a book called The Dressmakers of Hana. And another person cited the novelist Mary Wesley, who didn't even start writing till her 70s. She reckoned that's proof that there really is, as our noon credo goes, much more to come. It was interesting that the Queenagers were not inspired or impressed particularly by fame or women who were famous, but they were much more likely to be inspired by those they knew intimately, in the stories and actions of the women I see around me, as one of you put it. The author, Paul Nobel, whom I interviewed for the Noon Book Club on International Women's Day on Substack last week, if you go to our YouTube you can find the video, talked about being inspired by her Aunt Meera, who divorced, almost unheard of in her Indian cultural upbringing, but unlike other women Bell came across, she said seemed serene, fulfilled and lived life on her own terms. Another member of the circle, Paula, had a similar story, citing my Auntie Liz, who was chairman of the Scottish Police Federation in the 1970s and never married, and was a huge inspiration. She was a kick-ass woman. We also heard admiration for the Labour peers Anne Longfield, who's the Children's Commissioner, and Louise Casey. She was the lady who investigated the grooming scandals and is a seriously impressive woman. So there are some ones out there, but they're not the kind of starry Hollywood ones that you might expect. We all agreed that what we find inspiring are women whom we meet who have survived a lot, pass on their wisdom to others without fear or judgment, and who give us all the courage to speak our truth and get support. I'm also particularly impressed by people who've been through bad things and are still joyful, like Giselle Pellico. So here I am in the mountains, which has been pretty amazing. I've had some fantastic skiing today. But before I left, I really loved the magnolias in Hampstead Heath. I've given you some pictures of the magnolias at Kenwood. In the chaos of the world around us, let's hang on tightly to each other and take solace in the budding beauty of nature and the mountains and the snow, and remember all the good things. And remember, if you fancy a spring jaunt, we've still got a few spots left at our signature Wazing one-day retreat in April. And if you've been reading this for a while and haven't put your toe yet in the noon water or come to a circle, coming to Wazing is a really great place to start. It's just outside Reading. You'll meet lots of amazing women. It's on a beautiful private estate, which is usually inaccessible. We have a wonderful walk, there's lunch, restorative yoga, and a dip for those who fancy it, and a sauna to warm up. And a circle, of course. So see you there. Much love, and here I am in Maribel. You can see the view from my apartment. I'm here skiing with my 82-year-old mother, who's also a bit of an inspiration. Have a fantastic week. Thank you. Bye.